Welcome back. The last time I spoke to you about critical mineral supply chains and whether it was even possible for the world to break away from China where critical minerals are concerned. Today, I'm going to be talking to you on Israel, escalating geopolitical tensions in the Middle East and what that means for oil. A lack of direct retaliation by Israel against Iran for the October 1 ballistic missile attack has taken many by surprise. But almost nobody in the oil markets is ruling out some form of retaliation in the days and weeks ahead. There are two questions that are keeping oil market watchers up at night. What are the risks to Iran's oil infrastructure, and what are the risks to Iran blocking the Strait of Hormuz? The Strait of Hormuz, a strait between the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman, is a vital choke point through which some 20 million barrels per day of crude transits. Now, ample oil supplies, ample spare capacity, and soft demand have kept a lid on prices despite the escalating geopolitical tensions. But a physical barrier to oil flows is a key upside risk to prices. Iran has in the past used the strait as a deterrent and may do so again. But will it really block it? Seems unlikely given the extent of global isolationism it will face should it do so. Remember Iran's new president, Masoud Pezeshkian, when he spoke at the United Nations General Assembly a couple of weeks back, sent strong signals of wanting to restore the nuclear agreement and for easing of sanctions against Iran. Of course, the real political situation in Iran is more complicated, with the hardline Iranian Revolutionary Guards holding considerable sway. Now let's look at the question on Iran's oil infrastructure. Let's go through what's at stake here. Iran produces about 3.2 million barrels per day of crude oil, of which it exports about 1.7 million barrels per day. Now, China's small independent refineries are the single largest buyer. They take in about 90% of this crude and are pretty much the sole buyers of all of Iranian crude. Now, the reason they have emerged as the main buyers is because these refiners operate on thin margins and can get these sanctioned crudes at cheap prices. They also operate outside of the international banking system, mainly paying for these barrels in yuan through small local banks, and are hence able to evade sanctions and go through great lengths to physically get the oil shipped in the dark from Iran into Malaysian waters, where it is then transferred to other vessels, relabeled and renamed, and shows up in Chinese customs data as Malaysian origin crude. So any disruption to Iran's exports, and we've seen loadings drop off recently, is bad news for these Chinese refiners, who will then be forced to look for alternatives and impact trade flows and prices. So far, they're seeing some tightness in supply and rising prices, but they don't foresee a massive disruption because they're convinced that the US will not let Israel attack Iran's oil infrastructure, which is interesting to China's reliance on the US to be a security provider in the Middle East, while it continues to build and sell there without getting too politically involved. In fact, one of the grouses that the Western nations have had against China is its inability to influence Tehran to stop the Houthis from attacking vessels in the Red Sea. The China-Iran relationship is a complex and delicate one. China has prevented Iran's complete isolation by enabling its membership in the BRICS and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. It is Iran's largest trading partner, supplying it with goods and services that Iran can no longer get from Western nations, and buys 90% of its oil. It seems like it would have hefty leverage over Tehran, but yet it doesn't, because of the delicate political maneuvering that China needs to do in the Middle East. And Iran knows that at best, China will only partially have its back. China has stronger economic and technological partnerships with Israel, the UAE, and Saudi Arabia. So to wrap it up, the key risks to oil markets stem from potential closure of the Strait of Hormuz and attacks on Iran's oil infrastructure, both of which are low at the moment, but we'll have to wait and watch how things shape up. Thank you.